I think the first question I have is on Penn State side, actually. And the question is, can Caden Mingo go for the Nittany Lions in this game? Caden Mingo has been arguably the best player on the floor for Penn State this season, averaging almost 14 points per game. That's second on the team, barely. He's a great ball sharer at 4.3 assists per game, averaging a couple rebounds per game as well. He shoots it well from the field, and he's a very, very good defender, among the best in the nation in steal rate so far this season. So as we look at what Penn State can bring against Ohio State in this game, the first thing that I'm thinking about is, first of all, will Caden Mingo play? So again, leading the team in minutes, second on the team in scoring. On Monday, Mike Rhodes called him, head coach of Penn State, called him day to day. And usually when you have a player being called day to day, it means there's a good shot that they're going to be able to play for the next game. Doesn't mean for sure they're going to play, but normally when you hear that day to day, it means they're probably going to play within the next week or so, and they're close. Essentially what happened, I don't know what the injury is. He got hit in the face. He's been wearing that face mask, that face guard for weeks, for a long time for Penn State at this point. He got hit in the face, it seemed, in the win over Iowa that Penn State enjoyed, and left the game late in that one. He played 20-some minutes in that one, 28 minutes against Iowa. This is a guy that Penn State absolutely needs at this point. As you look at the way the Nittany Lions are playing right now, they need Mingo. Now, again, we've already talked about the fact that Penn State really, they're at the bottom of the Big Ten. It is what it is. But in wins for Penn State so far this year, Caden Mingo is averaging 16 points per game for Penn State. In losses, that number drops all the way down to 12 points per game for Mingo. So Penn State needs him, and they need him producing for sure. Now, a player that you can look to is Freddie DeLone V. He's a player that can kind of step up in place of Caden Mingo. He's no pushover himself at all. He's averaging 14 points per game so far this year, 2.3 assists per game. He's shooting at 47% from the field, but a very similar style of player as Mingo. He's not a guy who's really going to stretch the floor and make you fearful from the 3-point line. He's a guy that's can get inside and score. Very, very good in the mid-range as well. He had a really, really nice game against Washington. He's put together some good games so far this season for Penn State. And again, I mean, this is a former, I think, 4-star, if not even 5-star transfer who's in at Penn State now from Tennessee. It's a guy who on the season, again, he's had some nice games. He's had some not so nice games, but he's put up 20 points 6 times this year. 20 points or more 6 times this year. All of those games coming against Power 5 opponents. All of those games except for one, losses. He scored 25 in a win against Minnesota. The rest of those outcomes ended up being losses for Penn State. So I'm looking at Caden Mingo, and if he can't go, you look at maybe does DeLone step up? Who steps up for Penn State? That's the biggest question I have. If Mingo can't go, my guess, just because he's called day to day, my guess is that he goes for Penn State, especially because he played for the most part for Iowa. He gets hurt again and he doesn't return, but he was out celebrating with the team when Penn State was able to knock off Iowa this weekend. Big win for the Nittany Lions. We'll talk about that here in a second. By the way, it probably makes sense to talk about Penn State's kind of resume to this point, as well as we kind of review where Penn State is right now, sitting at 12-17, 3-15 in the Big Ten. You think it's bad in Columbus. You think it's bad to be an Ohio State fan. I'm not going to argue that it's great times in Columbus and that it's fun to be fighting for an NCAA tournament spot. But man, imagine being Penn State. Penn State's got it bad. They got it real bad. 3-15 in conference play. They sit at 125 in the net, at least at time of recording. They have 2 quad 1 wins. I'm going to duck. I'm going to brace for impact here. They have the same amount of quad 1 wins as Ohio State. Can you believe that? Man. The net is something special, isn't it? So Penn State just picked up that huge win over Iowa. Also have a win over Washington in the quad 1. They've got a quad 2 win over Minnesota. 3 and 4 losses as well. Right now, 125th or 120th in wins above bubble, 128th in Ken Palm and Bart Torvik, and 116th in BPI. So the metric's not good. Penn State's not going to the NCAA tournament unless they. Well, let's do some math here. Let's imagine a world where Penn State beats Ohio State and whoever they have to play for the rest of the year. I don't even know who that is. Rutgers. You can win that game. You already lost Rutgers once this year. You might as well beat them a second time. You're 14-17. Yeah, you're going to have to go win the NCAA tournament or the Big Ten tournament. Sorry, Penn State. So that's where they are right now. It's not a team that Ohio State on paper is really going to fear, and we'll talk about that. Penn State, even over their last 5, as you look at their overall play, again, they beat Iowa. They're coming off a 71-69 win over Iowa, but they got thumped by Nebraska. They got thumped pretty good by Rutgers, lost at Oregon as well. They did pick up a win against Washington all the way back on February 11th. But right now, this is a Penn State team that is not playing that well. So why do I bring up the resume? Why do I bring up the metrics when it comes to Ohio State? Well, this could very well be a trap game for the Buckeyes. I think we all see that. I think we can come to terms with the fact that this game feels very scary for Ohio State. You're coming off a huge win against Purdue, easily your best win of the season, easily your best win performance-wise, potentially, but also metric-wise. There's no better win on the Ohio State resume than the win over Purdue. Now, at this point, look, there's a couple notes here we have to get into, okay? First of all, talking about a trap game, Ohio State has not won 2 games in a row since it beat UCLA and Minnesota on January 17th and January 20th of this season. That's going on. I mean, it's a month and a half ago. Going on, you're not really going on 2 months, but it's a month and a half ago. So it's been a while since Ohio State picked up 2 wins in a row. Now, Ohio State has only lost 2 games in a row once this year as well, but it hasn't won 2 games in a row since it was January. And that was before, go back to that huge winter storm that we got. Remember that? That was before that. That was a long time ago. Ohio State also has not won consecutive games against Power 5 teams outside of beating UCLA and Minnesota in those games in a row. All the way back to the start of the season, they beat Notre Dame. Their next Power 5 opponent was Pitt. They lost. Beat Northwestern, then you lost to Illinois. Beat West Virginia, then you lost to North Carolina, and so on and so forth. So this is a game for Ohio State that I think it concerns us, probably as outsiders. It should probably concern those inside the program as well, knowing that Ohio State has not been able to string together wins consistently against Power 5 opponents. And they've had opportunities, right? It's not like they've had opportunities where it's been 2 Goliaths in a row that Ohio State has had to play. Let's take a look. Again, I already mentioned the win over Notre Dame. Then you go play Pitt. That is a really, really bad loss that Ohio State took. You beat Northwestern. You lost Illinois. That's a good team. Beat West Virginia. Lost North Carolina. That's a good team. Outside of that, beat Rutgers. Lost to Nebraska. Nebraska's a good team for sure. Beat Oregon. Lost Washington. You feel like you should have got that win for sure. There are games on the schedule this year where you could have won. I mean, you beat USC and then you lost to Virginia. That's a game a lot of people would say, yeah, it feels like Ohio State should have won that game. So all in all, as you kind of look at where Ohio State sits right now, coming off that big win again against Penn State, you're looking at an Ohio State team that really, really, really needs to find a way in this one to pick up a win because it's a can't lose. It's not a must win. I've explained the difference between those two before. Buckeyes have got to be able to pick up a win in this one, but it does feel very, very trappy. Again, coming off the biggest win of the season. I do think as well, this may be a good thing. It may not be a good thing for Ohio State. The weight has been lifted off the shoulders for the Buckeyes. I think you could see that in Bruce Thornton's reaction after the game. That picture went semi-viral, like I said in the recap show. I'm not saying that it's the case for him in particular. I'm not saying it's the case for the team, but we're all human. We're wired very, very similarly. The weight that you feel off the shoulders when Ohio State beat Purdue is the same way I feel, and probably a similar weight that the coaching staff would feel, that the players would feel, anyone within that program after a huge win over Purdue would probably say, you know what, we feel better now. It feels a little bit lighter within the locker room. Everything, everything doesn't have to feel so hard at this point. And I can tell you inside the program, Jake Diebler said this yesterday in his press conference that he wants his players off of social media. He doesn't want his players seeing this stuff. I can tell you internally, conversations I've had, they are flooding the minds of the players over and over and over and over again with positivity, with good vibes, because especially this time of year, it can be very loud. The negativity from an agent, from a parent saying you're not getting the ball enough, from a whoever else is out there. There can be pressure. I'm not getting the ball enough. I'm not getting enough playing time. I got to get mine. It's the end of the year. Portal's coming around. I got to take advantage of the minutes I've got. It can be very easy to let things get off the rails very, very quickly. So they're working with their players. The coaching staff is to make sure things are as positive as possible at this point. But at the same time, again, you feel like a weight is lifted off the shoulders with that win against Purdue. So you have that as well. And look, this is a huge week for Ohio State. Ohio State is not in the NCAA tournament. And what they would say inside, I'm sure, is basically, we haven't done anything. We're not in the NCAA tournament. We haven't clinched an at-large bid. We're not Michigan State at this point. There's still a long road to go. We've got a very huge week in front of us. And all of that is true. I don't disagree with any of that. But competitive as you may be as Division I athletes and Division I coaches, it's very easy to lose that edge when you go from playing a perennial powerhouse in Purdue and beating them to playing a team sitting alone in the Big Ten basement in Penn State. So it can be very easy to just feel a little bit more comfortable as you look at this game for Ohio State and as you look ahead to Indiana. You know how big that game can be. You could probably say, hey, we can give our 80% here. We can play this game as a C+ level and still win against Penn State, and we'll be able to go play Indiana. And if we win that game, we're probably in the NCAA tournament. Very easy to think that way. I'm not saying that's what's going on within the locker room. I don't know what's going on inside the locker room right now. But I can say, humanly, I can see it. Just like I can see humanly being a word. Now, on the flip side, are we really living in a world? Is this real? I say this. Is this a letdown spot for Penn State? I'm asking the question. I'm not saying it is. Relax. I'm just asking the question. Look, full stop. Penn State's win over Iowa this weekend is the biggest win of its season, by far, for the Nittany Lions. All due respect to Soup, but Campbell, not that impressive of a win. A win over a military branch is solid. Leave that. Some things better left unsaid. In all seriousness, the only other conference wins are at Washington, home against Minnesota. Not great teams in the Big Ten. That Iowa win was huge for Penn State. So you pick up that win. Now, is it possible to have a letdown spot? Is it even possible, though? You're a 3-win Big Ten team in March. Is it possible to get let down? Can Penn State fans really get let down anymore, especially with what's happened on the football field in the fall? And now we get into the winter and it goes into the spring. What do Penn State fans even have to look forward to at this point? I don't know. Probably next football season. Maybe they have a tertiary sport that's nice. I think they've got a good wrestling program. But my point is, not a lot to hope for on the men's basketball side. I mean, they're losing recruiting battles to North Carolina, which, hey, credit to Penn State for being in a recruiting battle with North Carolina, but they still lost that one. So I don't know. Does any of this apply to a Penn State team that is 3-15 in conference play? I'm not sure. Probably not, but it's something worth thinking about, right? I would say. Another question I have, can Ohio State can they glide? Can the Buckeyes glide to a win in this one? Again, this is not a must-win game for Ohio State. As we kind of take a look at the resume for the Buckeyes, what you're seeing on your screen, if you're watching on YouTube, this is through March 1st, but the resume isn't going to change that much, okay? They're in a great spot in terms of wins above bubble. They're in a great spot in terms of the predictive metrics from Ken Palm and Bart Torvik, all the way 30th in Torvik. 0 quad 3, 4 losses. Net loves Ohio State. They now have 2 quad 1 wins, and Buckeye fans are rooting for Northwestern to finish in the top 75 down the stretch. They're rooting for Wisconsin to finish in the top 30 down the stretch. That's where you are for Ohio State at this point. This game against Indiana is going to be huge. And we're already talking about Indiana on a Penn State preview show. So if we're talking about it, again, it feels like it's hard to not let your mind wander to that game if you're a player within the Ohio State Buckeye men's basketball team right now. Ohio State has not had a game where they've really pulled away so far this season. Outside of that Wisconsin win at home where they won by 17 and the drumming of Maryland, that game, the best game Ohio State has played in Big Ten play, other than Purdue, best game Ohio State has played in Big Ten play to this point. Against Rutgers, they won that game. They trailed by 16 in the first half. UCLA, extremely impressive win, at least to me. Not one they really dominated completely. They needed overtime to beat Minnesota. They only beat Penn State by 6 the first time these two teams met. So Ohio State hasn't really had the blowout wins that other teams across the Big Ten have had this year. And this is the opportunity for Ohio State, after a win over Purdue, to show that they belong in an upper echelon of the Big Ten, to escape the worlds of the USCs and, the Marylands, Penn State, the UCLAs, the Minnesotas, whoever you want to grab, who have been plucky this year, but just super inconsistent. Ohio State wants to fully be out of that tier and move up a tier with, the Iowas of the world who just lost to Penn State. Great argument. The Wisconsins of the world. You understand what I'm saying, though, at this point. That's where Ohio State could be. They have the opportunity to do it in this game. And look, 2 of the last 4 wins for Ohio State were blowouts, so they've shown the ability. Maybe Ohio State is getting hot at just the right time. That would be wonderful if that were the case. But as I look at the way Ohio State presents for this game, I think that it would be very, very helpful to pick up a win in which the Buckeyes can dominate Penn State from start to finish. Not necessarily for rest. I don't think that's necessarily a big deal for Ohio State. Does Bruce Thornton play 35 minutes instead of 38? This is the way college basketball works, is essentially you're going to play a bunch of minutes. If you're a starter, you don't really get pulled at any point, essentially. So as you look at Ohio State heading into this game, I think that you would love to see them blow out a Penn State team that is not as good as you. That would be huge for the Buckeyes in this one. But I also think that you look at Ohio State's ability against a bad team. They've shown some blowout capabilities. They come off a huge win against Purdue. Show your ability to be in that upper echelon is what I would say in this game for the Buckeyes.